The colony of Valoran was built with hope. It was one of Earth's brightest dreams among the stars, a world of green fields, oceans, and shining cities. Families had come here to escape the noise of old Earth, to build something new, something better. Children played in the wide streets, farmers sang as they harvested golden crops, and traders from many species visited the ports. Valoran was a beacon of peace, a symbol of what humanity could create when it reached beyond its home. But peace never lasts forever. Far away, in the halls of the Galactic Council, whispers grew louder. To them, humanity was dangerous, too fast, too bold, too clever. Humans had spread across the stars quicker than expected, building colonies, warships, and alliances. The Council feared that one day humanity would rise high enough to challenge their rule, so they made a decision, a cold and cruel decision. They would destroy Valoran, not because Valoran was strong, but because it was loved. Destroying it would break the human spirit, or so they believed. The attack came without warning. One clear morning, when the skies of Valoran were painted blue, the Council's fleet appeared. Giant warships blackened the sky, casting shadows over the cities below. Panic spread as families looked up and saw death falling from the heavens. The first wave of energy fire struck the capital, turning towers into dust. The second wave set fields and forests ablaze. Children screamed, people ran, the air filled with smoke and sorrow. The defenders of Valoran tried to resist, but they were few. A handful of human patrol ships rose into the sky, brave but hopeless against the Council's massive armada. One by one, those ships were burned, their crews fighting until the last second. On the ground, soldiers rushed to protect civilians, but the destruction was too great. Valoran was not a battlefield, it was a massacre. In the chaos, a small group of survivors gathered in an old bunker. Among them was a young girl named Arya, clutching her brother's hand. Her parents had been lost in the first strikes, her world shattered in moments. But her eyes still burned with defiance. She whispered to her brother, "They will not win, not forever." Above the planet, one desperate human commander knew what must be done. Captain Elias Ward, aboard the patrol ship Dawnlight, ordered his crew to hold the line long enough to send a message. He knew they could not stop the Council, but maybe, just maybe, Earth would hear Valoran's cry. The ship was torn apart in fire, but the signal escaped, carried across the void. On Valoran's surface, the killing continued. Council soldiers landed to finish what the bombardment had begun. They dragged survivors from their homes, burned villages, and left nothing standing. Their orders were clear. Erase Valoran from existence. The screams of the innocent echoed in every valley, every ruined street. The Council broadcast their victory to the galaxy. Their message was cold and final. Human colonies will not rise. Earth will not spread. Valoran is gone. To them, it was a warning to all who might resist their rule. But to humanity, it would become something else. It would become a spark, a wound that could never heal. Deep underground, Arya and the survivors listened as the sky burned. Some wept, some prayed, some cursed the stars themselves. But Arya stood silent, staring upward with eyes filled not with fear but with fire. Her words were quiet, but they carried hope. "Earth will hear us," she said. "Earth will come." And across the galaxy in the silence of deep space, the distress call moved closer and closer to its destination. Earth would soon hear the truth. Valoran had been massacred, but vengeance was coming. The signal from Valoran reached Earth after long days of silence in the void. It carried broken voices, cries for help, the sound of fire and death. Then came static, and then only silence. Every leader on Earth listened to the message in shock. Mothers wept, soldiers clenched their fists, and the halls of power grew cold and still. The Galactic Council believed Earth would be afraid. They believed the message of Valoran's destruction would break human spirit. But Earth had learned one lesson across centuries of struggle. Every attack, every betrayal, only made humanity stronger. In a hidden command center deep beneath the mountains, the leaders of the Terran Defense Alliance gathered. Holographic maps of the galaxy burned with red lights marking Council fleets. Generals argued, politicians shouted, scientists warned of terrible risks. But one man brought silence with his voice. Admiral Marcus Kane, known as the Iron Strategist, rose and spoke with calm fury. "They struck Valoran, a colony of farmers, children, and dreamers, not warriors," he said. "They believe we are weak, but weakness is not in our blood." His words echoed through the chamber. a promise of vengeance. While debates continued above ground, in the shipyards of Earth, something was already moving. Massive dry docks hidden under oceans and mountains roared to life. Gigantic frames of warships stirred like sleeping beasts. The Council thought humanity was still flying old cruisers and patrol ships. They had no idea what Earth had been building in secret. Colossus-class dreadnoughts, each the size of a floating city, armed with weapons the galaxy had never seen. Scientists had whispered for years about forbidden technology, engines that could bend gravity, cannons that could pierce planetary shields. Now those whispers became reality. The ships were not built for pride, they were built for survival. And now, for vengeance. Back in the command center, arguments raged on. Some feared that open war would bring the Council's full wrath. Others cried thus. At Valoran's memory demanded blood, but Admiral Kane raised his hand once more, his eyes like stone. The Council believes silence is our answer, he said. Let them believe it. For silence is the mask we wear before the storm. And so Earth prepared quietly, secretly. Fleets were assembled in shadow. Pilots were trained in hidden bases. Codes and orders were whispered only to the trusted few. The galaxy saw nothing, but something vast was stirring. In the ruins of Valoran, survivors still clung to life. Arya and her small band of refugees hid in tunnels and burned-out buildings. Every day they feared discovery. Council soldiers marched through the ashes, hunting them like animals. But Arya held on to hope, repeating the same words again and again. Earth will come, she told the children. Earth will not forget us. Meanwhile, in distant space, Council envoys laughed in their grand halls. They spoke of human weakness, of colonies erased. They toasted their victory, certain that Earth would bow its head. But far away, beyond their sight, the engines of vengeance were already burning. One night, under the pale light of Earth's moon, Admiral Kane stood before his fleet for the first time. Rows of warships stretched out into the darkness. Silent and waiting, he looked at his captains, men and women hardened by fire. He raised his voice so all could hear. They wanted silence. They will hear thunder. They wanted fear. They will see fury. They wanted to erase our children. We will erase their lies. The fleet stood ready, the galaxy still blind to their awakening. But soon the Council would learn what humanity had become. Not weak, not broken, but unshakable. And when Earth answered, the stars themselves would tremble. The fleet of Earth did not rush into battle. It moved like a shadow through the endless dark. Colossus-class warships slid between stars with Scylla's and engines, their black hulls drinking the light. They did not announce themselves. They did not roar. They waited, hidden, like hunters in the tall grass. The Galactic Council laughed in their high towers. Reports spoke of Valoran's ashes, of human survivors hunted like prey. Council commanders toasted to their victory, never seeing the storm forming just beyond their borders. They believed humanity was silent, broken, afraid. But silence was a weapon, and humans had sharpened it well. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, the largest Terran dreadnought ever built. The ship's command deck glowed with maps of Council space. Every star, every patrol, every blind spot was marked in red. Kane's voice was calm, but each word carried iron. We strike where they believe us weakest. We appear where they believe us gone. And when we reveal ourselves, it will already be too late for them. Scouts reported the Council fleets spread thin. Many warships pulled away to other borders, chasing small rebellions. The Council had grown arrogant, certain their power could never be challenged. Kane saw their weakness, and he smiled, a cold smile that carried no joy, only promise. In the ruins of Valoran, Arya still hid with the survivors. Every day was a battle for bread, for water, for silence. The Council's soldiers marched above, dragging people from the rubble. Yet even as hunger gnawed at her, Arya's voice never shook. Hold on, she told the frightened children. The shadows move, the stars change, Earth is coming. Far away, the fleet moved deeper into enemy space. Terran warships slipped past outposts, cloaked by strange new technology. Captured alien codes were used to pass through checkpoints. The Council never suspected that humanity had already infiltrated their lines. Every moment brought Earth's fleet closer to Valoran, closer to vengeance, but suspense grew heavy in the air. Would Earth's secret stay hidden, or would the Council sense the store? Too soon, the bridge crews whispered of risk, of death. They had seen the Council's power, fleets larger than anything Earth had ever faced, but they also felt something else, something sharper than fear. It was resolve, it was rage, it was the fire of survival. In hidden Council stations, rumors spread. Some traders swore they had seen black ships moving where no ships should be. Others told of patrols disappearing, entire convoys lost in the dark. The Council dismissed them as lies, but whispers spread like cracks in glass. The humans are not broken, the whispers said. The humans are coming. Admiral Kane listened to those whispers with patience. Every rumor planted fear. Every rumor weakened the enemy before a single shot was fired. War was not only weapons. War was also shadows and silence, and Kane wielded them like blades. One night, as the fleet drifted through a dying star system, Kane stood before his captains. Around him, men and women from Earth's many nations, scars on their faces, steel in their eyes. He raised his hand and said only 3 words: "For Valoran's children." And in that moment, every heart aboard every ship burned with fire. They would not fail. They could not fail. The Council believed humans were scattered dust. But what was dust in the wind could also become a storm. Back on Valoran, the survivors heard thunder in the skies. Strange lights moved among the clouds, unseen by the Council soldiers. Arya's brother whispered, "Is it them?" Arya only smiled through her hunger and pain. "Yes," she said, "the storm is here." And above Valoran, cloaked warships drifted silently into position, waiting, watching, ready. The Council thought the humans were gone, but in truth, the humans had arrived, and the first strike was only a heartbeat away. The skies above Valoran were black with ash. Council patrol fleets circled the dying world like views. Vultures around a corpse. On the ground, the last survivors hid in ruins, praying for a miracle, and far beyond the clouds, that miracle waited, silent and unseen. The Terran warships hung in the void, cloaked in darkness, Colossus-class dreadnoughts, each armed with weapons humanity had sworn never to use unless forced. Now they waited for the command. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Admiral Marcus Kane stood still, his eyes locked on the map. Every red marker was an enemy ship, every one a reminder of Valoran's screams. A young officer asked, "Admiral, when do we strike?" Kane's answer was calm. "When the enemy is most certain we do not exist." For hours, the fleet remained silent, watching Council ships move across the planet's orbit. The enemy laughed, confident in their victory. They believed humanity was broken, scattered, gone. And then, in one heartbeat, everything changed. The cloaks dropped. Suddenly, the black sky was filled with giants of steel. The Council patrol commander shouted in disbelief, "Human warships! Impossible!" But it was no illusion, no trick. It was vengeance made real. The first Terran salvo lit the void. Particle lances cut through Council cruisers like fire through paper. Missile storms rained down, guided by intelligence systems far beyond anything the aliens expected. Within seconds, the patrol fleet was burning. Ships cracked open, their screams lost in the cold vacuum. On Valoran's surface, survivors looked up through the smoke and clouds. For the first time since the massacre began, the night sky was not filled with fear but with fire. Children pointed at the burning heavens, whispering in awe. They came. Earth came. Arya clutched her brother's hand, tears mixing with ash on her face. "I told you," she said. "I told you." But the battle was not over. The Council scrambled reinforcements from nearby sectors. More ships jumped into orbit, their weapons blazing. The void turned into chaos, red and blue fire streaking across the black. The Council thought they still had numbers. Still had the advantage, but they had never fought war like humans fought. Terran warships did not move like their alien enemies. They twisted, darted, vanished, and struck again. Every move was a trap, every feint a knife waiting in the dark. Council admirals shouted in panic as entire formations were lured into ambushes, and all the while Kane's voice rang across the comms, calm and unshaken. "For Valoran," he said again and again, and his fleet answered as one, "For Valoran." Then came the moment that shook the galaxy. The Iron Resolve fired its main cannon for the first time. A beam of energy cut straight through a Council battleship, piercing its shields and splitting it in half. The explosion lit the orbit of Valoran brighter than a rising sun. Survivors on the surface fell to their knees, their tears not of sorrow but of hope. The Council fleets began to falter. Some captains tried to flee, others fought in desperation, but wherever they turned, humanity was there, striking, relentless, unbreakable. One alien commander cried out, "This cannot be humans, this is something else." But the answer came in fire. This was humanity, and this was vengeance. After hours of battle, silence returned to Valoran's orbit. The black sky was littered with wrecks, glowing like broken stars. Only Terran ships remained, engines burning bright. The survivors below wept with joy. For the first time since the massacre, they believed they might live. Admiral Kane sent a single message across every frequency. His voice was calm, but it carried like thunder. "To the Galactic Council, hear us," he said. "You slaughtered Valoran. You called it victory, but this is only the beginning." His words burned into every ear, human and alien alike, and with those words, humanity declared war. The news of Valoran's skies burning with Council wrecks spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, whispers turned into shouts. The humans had struck back, and their vengeance was not a rumor but a storm. Worlds once silent began to listen. Species long afraid of the Council raised their heads. Something had changed, and the stars themselves seemed to feel it. Admiral Marcus Kane knew this was only the first step. Valoran was the wound, but the Council's power reached across hundreds of systems. If humanity wanted true justice, they would need to strike deeper, harder, faster. The Terran fleet moved like thunder from one star system to the next. Every Council garrison they found was torn apart. Every patrol ship that challenged them was reduced to fire and debris. The galaxy had seen human war before, but never like this. Terran warships no longer fought as defenders. They fought as hunters. They struck at supply lines, shipyards, and hidden Council strongholds. And with each battle, their legend grew. The aliens had called humans weak, but now that weakness became their greatest fear. In one system, the Council gathered a fleet twice the size of Kane's. They outnumbered him, outgunned him, and mocked him. But Kane was not a man who fought fair battles. He lured the enemy into an asteroid field. Terran ships wove through the rocks with deadly precision. Council cruisers crashed and burned. Their larger numbers turned into a trap. By the end, half the enemy fleet was gone, and the rest fled. The galaxy learned a truth that day. Human unpredictability was a weapon no Council admiral could counter. Back on Valoran, the survivors were finally rescued. Dropships descended through the smoke, Terran soldiers pouring out to lift the weak and wounded. Arya and her brother stared at the armored humans in awe. "You came," she whispered, her voice breaking. A soldier knelt beside her and smiled beneath his helmet. "We always come," he said. "We never forget our own." The children of Valoran wept, not for sorrow but for hope, and their rescue was broadcast across the galaxy. Other colonies, long afraid, now believed. But vengeance was not just fire and battles. It was also truth. When the Terran fleet captured a Council flagship, they found recordings of the order to erase Valoran. The Council's leaders had signed it. Cold and merciless, Kane ordered the evidence sent to every channel in every system. Billions of eyes saw the truth. The Council had not acted for order. They had acted for fear. They had tried to crush humanity before it could rise, and now the galaxy knew their crime. In alien marketplaces, crowds whispered, "If they can do this to humans, they can do it to us." In secret meetings, rebels lifted their heads. If humans can fight, maybe so can we. The Council's iron grip began to crack. Not from outside, but from within. But the Council was not blind. They gathered their high armada, the largest fleet in their history. They swore to crush humanity before the infection of rebellion spread too far. Their ships filled the skies of core worlds, weapons glowing like 1,000 suns. Their leaders spoke with fear hidden beneath pride. Humanity must be erased completely, they declared. But deep down, they feared what was coming. Admiral Kane knew of their preparations. Scouts and spies carried news of the High Armada, but he did not tremble. He stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve and looked at his captains. "The Council wants to end us," he said. "Then let them bring all they have, because Earth has not yet begun to fight." The Terran fleet was battered but unbroken. Every soldier carried the memory of Valoran in their hearts. Every ship bore the scars of battle, yet still flew. The Council had power, yes, but humanity had something more. They had rage, they had defiance, and they had the will to endure. Across the stars, battles raged, fires burned, and empires trembled. The galaxy was no longer silent. For the first time in centuries, someone had dared to defy the Council and win. And in the shadows of war, one truth echoed louder than all others. The humans were not weak. They were vengeance itself. The Council's lies could not survive the light of truth. Every corner of the galaxy had now seen the recordings. Every species knew Valoran had not been a threat, only a home of farmers and children. The Council had destroyed it not for safety, but for fear. And that fear turned against them. Across alien worlds, whispers grew into chants. Merchants who once bowed to Council soldiers now spat at their boots. Workers in factories passed secret messages. Humanity fights, so can we. Oppressed races began to rise, not in armies, but in voices. And each voice was a crack in the wall of the Council's power. Admiral Marcus Kane watched the change from the bridge of the Iron Resolve. Reports came in of rebellions on distant worlds, stations refusing Council orders, planets demanding freedom. But Kane knew rebellion without strength would be crushed, and so he made a choice, a dangerous choice. He would not only fight for Earth, he would fight for every world chained under the Council. The Terran fleet began to strike not only at Council warships but at their supply chains, their prisons, their slave camps. Wherever the Council's cruelty was strongest, Earth's ships appeared. They freed prisoners, armed rebels, and left the Council scrambling. Soon entire sectors slipped from the Council's control, and always the survivors shouted the same words. For Valoran. On Valoran itself, the survivors were no longer victims. Arya, once a frightened girl, now stood as a symbol. Her story of survival was told across 1,000 channels. Children across the stars whispered her name. To them, she was proof that even the smallest could endure the darkest fire, and when she spoke on a broadcast, her voice was steady. They tried to erase us, but we still stand, and so will you. The Council grew desperate. Their leader screamed in fury as reports piled higher. The High Armada was assembled, the greatest fleet ever built, a wall and firepower stretching across the void. Their plan was simple: find Kane's fleet, destroy it, and show the galaxy that resistance was hopeless. But even as they prepared their armies, fear gnawed at them. For every planet that burned, 3 more whispered rebellion, and all of it was because of humanity. Admiral Kane studied the reports in silence. The High Armada was vast, stronger than anything humanity had ever faced. But he did not waver. He stood before his captains and said, "They believe numbers will save them, but numbers cannot stop resolve. They believe their empire eternal, but empires fall when truth burns brighter than fear." His words lit the hearts of every soldier. They were not only Terrans anymore, they were the sword of justice for the entire galaxy. Meanwhile, in hidden Council chambers, doubt spread. Some counselors whispered of peace, others of surrender, but the hardliners refused, blinded by pride. They spoke of extermination, of ending humanity once and for all. Yet in their voices trembled something they could not hide. It was fear. The Terran fleet grew stronger, not only by steel, but by allies. Rebel ships joined them, ragged fleets of aliens who had nothing left to lose. They were not trained like Earth's Navy, not armed like Colossus-class dreadnoughts, but they carried something sharper than weapons. They carried fury. For the first time in history, dozens of species stood together, not under the Council's chains, but under Earth's banner of vengeance. Arya stood beside soldiers on Valoran's rebuilt outposts. She was no longer just a survivor. She was the heart of a movement. Her voice was broadcast to the fleet before every battle. "They thought we were weak," she said. "They thought we would bow. But look at us now. Look at what we have become." Her words lit fires in hearts across 1,000 worlds, and as the High Armada read to march, the galaxy held its breath. On one side stood the ancient power of the Council, vast and merciless. On the other stood humanity and their new allies, scarred, angry, and unbreakable. The storm that began on Valoran was now a fire across the stars, and in the silence before the greatest battle of the age, one truth was clear. The tide had turned. The galaxy trembled as the Council's high armada moved, thousands of warships larger than moons, engines burning like suns. They filled the void with their power, confident that no force could stand against them. Their leaders declared that humanity would be erased from history. They swore the rebellion would be crushed before it could spread any further. But across the stars, another fleet gathered, Terran warships scarred from endless battles, alien allies flying patched ships, rebel vessels armed with stolen weapons. They were smaller, fewer, outnumbered, but they carried something the Council had never understood. They carried fire in their hearts. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve. Before him stretched the united fleet, humans and aliens together. His voice carried across every channel. "Today they bring everything against us," he said. "Today they believe they will end us, but today they will learn a truth carved in fire. We are not broken. We are humanity, and we do not fall." The fleet roared back with one voice, "For Valoran." The two armadas met in a dead system, a place of broken planets and silent suns. The void shook as the first volleys lit the dark. Council firepower blazed like storms, tearing through space, but the Terran fleet did not break. They moved with precision, weaving through the enemy's wall, striking at weak points. Every dreadnought fired with fury. Every missile carried the weight of Valoran's ashes. The Council's admirals shouted in anger, "How can they stand against us? They are only humans." But the truth burned before their eyes. This was not only humans, this was the galaxy itself rising against them. In the chaos of battle, rebel ships sacring affixed themselves to shield Terran dreadnoughts. Alien fighters swarmed like fireflies, overwhelming Council bombers. And at the heart of it all, the Iron Resolve carved a path straight toward the Council's command flagship. Admiral Kane's eyes were fixed on it. "They wanted to erase us," he said. "Let us erase their lies." The flagship unleashed its full power, a weapon that tore apart smaller ships in a single strike. For a moment, hope trembled. But the Terran fleet closed ranks. One ship after another interlocked shields, absorbing the fire. They bled, they burned, but they did not fall. And when the flagship's weapon fell silent, the Iron Resolve answered. Its main cannon unleashed a beam brighter than any star. It struck the Council flagship through its heart. The mighty vessel split apart, flames spilling into the void. The Council's command shattered in an instant, and with it, their empire cracked. Across the battlefield, Council ships faltered. Some fled, some fought in desperation, but their spirit was broken. For the first time in centuries, the Council had been defeated not by numbers, but by will. Humanity had turned their fear into fury, their sorrow into strength. The galaxy watched as the once invincible armada scattered into wreckage. On Valoran, survivors wept as the news arrived. Arya, standing among the ruins of her old home, lifted her face to the sky. Her words were simple but powerful. "They cannot erase us because we are unbreakable." Her voice was broadcast across the stars, carried to every world that had once been afraid, and her words became the anthem of a new age. The Council, once feared above all, was no more. Their towers crumbled, their fleets broken, their power gone. In their place rose something new. Worlds once divided now stood together, not under chains, but under the memory of Valoran. Humanity did not claim an empire. Hay claimed something greater. Respect. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge, silent as wrecks drifted past. The war was won, but the scars would never fade. He looked at the stars and whispered, "They thought they could end us, but they only forged us stronger." And as the Terran fleet turned for home, one truth echoed across the galaxy: do not provoke humanity, for their vengeance is unbreakable.